Welcome to Hilary Topper On Air, the podcast you can't afford to miss.
What kind of parent tries to turn their child against another parent? Unfortunately, parental alienation happens more often than you'd like to think. According to Divorce Magazine, more than 13.4% of parents going through a divorce believe they're being alienated from at least one child. So what can you do? I'm Hilary Topper, and this is Hilary Topper On Air. Today, I'm speaking with Jordan Trager. He's the Associate Attorney at Wisselman, Harounian, and Associate PC. So, Jordan, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I've been doing matrimonial and family law divorce for just about 25 years. For the last several years, I've kind of focused, got a couple of niches in divorce mediation and in parental alienation. And I've been working on those kinds of cases regularly, probably for about the last 5 years now. And I've been with Wisselman and Harounian and Associates for about 8 years. All right.
So tell us about Wisselman and Harounian and Associates and your affiliation with the nonprofit organization Parental Alienation Awareness Organization, U.S., which is a mouthful.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that relationship?
Well, our firm has been doing matrimonial and family law. The founding partner, Jerome Wisselman, has been doing this for probably over 40 years. We have 8 attorneys here who focus almost exclusively on matrimonial and family law. And recently we've had the privilege of being associated with the Parental Alienation Awareness Organization, which is a national nonprofit organization that basically does two things. It educates the public on parental alienation, which a lot of the public doesn't have a great deal of knowledge on, and it's also a support group for parents who are victims of parental alienation, and it provides support. And we have a local chapter here, and we meet once a month, and we carry out that mission with them.
Awesome. So let's talk about parental alienation. What exactly is it, and how can it be identified?
So parental alienation is kind of a unique type of thing, although varying degrees of alienation happen in many, many cases. Small acts of trying to turn a child against one another or against another parent are commonplace in a divorce case and in a custody case. But what makes parental alienation unique is the idea that one parent is completely cut out and severed from the child's life by the other parent. And essentially, the parent has no relationship or very little relationship with the child as a result of the acts of the other parent. And that's what makes that unique.
Let's look at what happens actually to the child when this happens. Do they reject at some point the parent that is, trying to alienate the other parent, or what happens?
So what happens in a lot of these cases is the parent, prior to going through the divorce case or prior to going through the custody case, may have a very healthy, normal, loving relationship with the child or children. And then once the case starts, things start to change. And many times the parent isn't always aware of the changes that are taking place. They happen very slowly. But at some point, a child begins to identify so strongly with one parent, and they start expressing unreasonable negative feelings of anger or hatred or fear or rejection toward the other parent that's disproportionate to the experience that child has previously had with the other parent. And then the relationship becomes severed, as a result of the divorce or custody case. And that could be in the form of hatred or fear or the other things that I've mentioned.
So talk to me about what someone could look for when this happens. Maybe it's a grandparent, maybe it's a friend. I would suspect that the parent who is doing this to the child doesn't even realize that they're doing this to the child. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. It really all depends on the particular parent. Sometimes a parent may be just offhand disparaging remarks about the other parent. There isn't a full understanding that what they're doing is not only, part of their divorce case, but is harmful to the mental health and the emotional health of the child. A child basically wants the love and affection of both parents. Most therapists would say that. And, by disparaging the other parent, it not only affects the relationship of the parent with that child, but it affects the long-term mental health of the child itself. There are extreme cases where, parents do this deliberately sometimes it's out of just anger. They're very angry at the other parent during the course of the divorce, and they act out of anger, not realizing the damage they're doing. And then there are even more extreme circumstances where some of the parents have sicknesses and can't be convinced that what they're doing is harmful to the child.
All right, before we move on, I just want to say that I am so appreciative of our sponsors, and I must thank them. Please support our sponsors and tell them that you heard about them on Hilary Topper On Air. Special thanks to the Russo Law Group, MedPro, Once Again Nut Butter, and Fortune Fine Jewelry. So now, Jordan, back to you. How are the dynamics of a family altered by this effects of parental alienation?
Well, the dynamics of the family are initially altered by the divorce or the custody matter, right? The parent, you have a nuclear family, and then there's the divorce. So that all, of course, alters the dynamic, but the parental alienation alters it further, because what you wind up having is an unnatural situation. A child, what would normally happen in a divorce or custody case is, a child would spend part of their time with one parent and part of their time with the other parent. And although it's not an ideal situation, it's certainly more healthy than if a child has a relationship, no relationship with the other parent. So the dynamic is completely thrown off. And as a result of that, down the road, there are issues that children can suffer from as a result of this, as far as therapy, inability to form, healthy relationships in adulthood. So the whole dynamic really has a long-term consequences that aren't always apparent right at the beginning.
Which leads me actually to my next question is, what is the impact of parental alienation on the alienated child? So you're saying that it could affect their relationships, it could affect a lot of things going on in their lives, right?
It can and does affect a lot of things going on in their lives. So, they may, again, the biggest impact is the relationship building that they have going forward in the future, as far as friendships and dating. There are issues regarding self-esteem, which is a big one. The child will develop self-esteem issues growing up. Right now there are a number of therapists who specialize in parental alienation who are still studying the effects down the road of parental alienation and how it hurts the child going forward. So we don't know all of the effects, but we do know some of them, and it's very damaging for the children into adulthood.
So now let's talk a little bit about the legal aspect of this. How is the phenomenon of parental alienation treated from a legal perspective?
Well, the courts are a little bit all over the place when it comes to this, and actually a number of attorneys and judges have been trying to, kind of understand the concept of parental alienation better, trying to identify it better, to define it better, to see. So, for instance, you know, there was something called parental alienation syndrome, which was introduced in the courts about a decade ago. And the courts basically took the position that the syndrome itself does not exist. But from a legal perspective, what they did say is that there are definitely acts of parental alienation, and they do look to that in different types of cases. So, but recently there was a couple of decisions and articles in the New York Law Journal that tried to get a better handle on exactly what parental alienation is, how to define it. But the basic underlying law is that parental alienation of a child from the other parents so inconsistent for the best interest of the child that it raises a strong probability that the alienating parent is unfit to act as a custodial parent. The issues that come up is what does the court do from there? And sometimes the courts are reluctant to step in and to say, well, this parent is alienating and engaging in alienating behavior. Do we remove the child from that parent? Do we take some other kind of remedy? They're oftentimes reluctant to do that. One thing that courts do is they will oftentimes recommend what's called rehabilitative therapy to try to get the alienated parent and his or her relationship with the child back on track. But it requires a lot of cooperation on the part of the parent who's doing the alienation. So sometimes you get the cooperation and sometimes you don't. And that's been one of the difficulties in court.
Can you share some case studies with us of some people that you have worked with that have done this or have not done this?
From rehabilitative therapy or as far as just being a victim of parental alienation?
Yeah, I mean, from the legal standpoint, when you come in, and do you have any cases that you could share with us?
I mean, I have to protect the identities of these parents, but I can give you generalities. Two cases, and this happens in other types of cases. So, one is, for instance, a case of where we had a teenager who had been alienated from his parent, and he was very angry. He had been, refusing to have any kind of relationship, really a hatred towards the parent. And we were trying to just figure out exactly why. Why was that the case? We couldn't figure it out. We thought, well, maybe the client did something to make this teenage child angry or upset, and we were trying to get to the bottom of it. And it became readily apparent that there was no answer. There was no one thing that we could put our finger on why this child would be so angry and have so much hatred towards my client. And that's when it became apparent that it wasn't really that the child had anger and hatred. It's that the parent who was doing the alienation had the hatred and the anger and was projecting it onto the child. And it was going from there. And we had a case like that in court. And then we had another case with a younger child where the parent would go to pick up the child, and the child would hide under the table and be fearful from the parent, wouldn't want to come out from underneath the table. And again, the same thing. The parent would say, "I don't understand exactly why the child won't come out from underneath the table. Why is this child afraid of you? We just don't know. It's a mystery." And it became clear as well that the mystery was really cleared up, that there was alienation. So oftentimes it's almost like you get the case and it starts off a little bit like a mystery where the child is either angry or fearful at the parent, and you're not sure exactly why, and you want to get to the bottom and figure out, well, maybe my client did something to make this child afraid or upset or angry. And then you kind of run out of explanations at a point, and then it becomes apparent that it's the parents' disparagement and coaching of that child that's causing this.
That's just so sad, really. I mean, what can actually be done about this?
Well, I mean, it's usually it's a two-step approach. There's the therapy, and then there's also the legal. As far as the therapy, normal therapy, and I'm not a therapist, but normal therapy as a general rule will not be effective for parental alienation. There has to be very specialized therapy called rehabilitative therapy. There are specialized therapists who deal with this, particularly who are familiar with it. If they go through the normal therapy process, it could actually make it worse rather than better, because the child could, the therapist can just report back, well, the child's angry and or fearful and doesn't want to have a relationship with the child, without really digging deeper to figure out why the child has those feelings. And as far as the legal aspects, there are a number of legal remedies. The problem is the courts oftentimes are reluctant to do that. The most obvious one is changing custody from the alienating parent to the rejected parent. And oftentimes the courts are reluctant to do that because they're afraid of how the child will react in a situation like that. There's other remedies such as suspending child support or holding a parent in contempt of court. And it's very hard to convince the courts to do that. And as a result, these kinds of alienation cases are allowed to persist and continue. And sometimes there isn't a whole lot you can do. The best that you can do in many circumstances is to just try to get the court to go along with the rehabilitative therapy, to force the alienating parent to go along with the rehabilitative therapy, and hope that it works and that the relationship gets rebuilt. And sometimes it works, particularly with younger children, but once the children are older, it's a little bit harder and it doesn't always work. And sometimes the parents are permanently alienated from the children, which is a very sad thing.
It's very sad. Wow, this is a real eye-opener. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about Wisselman, Harounian Associates, PC?
Well, they can go online and go to www.lawjaw.com. They'll get to the Wisselman, Harounian and Associates website. They can click on I'm Jordan Trager, and they can just click on my icon. They're free to ask any questions they want. I also run monthly meetings of the Parental Alienation Awareness Organization. We post that on Meetup once a month, and we have them at a local diner, and people come in and they discuss, either their particular cases, or, they ask for help, how, ways, and, it's not just, it's people in similar situations giving advice to one another on how to handle from a legal perspective, but also to handle it from an emotional perspective, because some of the people that just come in are just emotionally spent, and to just be around other people that are facing similar situations is a big boost to them.
And these meetings, these Parental Alienation Awareness Organization US meetings, are held complimentary each week on a Monday I have here from 6 to 8 p.m. And I also have a phone number in case you want to go to this meeting. Call the office at 516-773-8300. That's 516-773-8300. Jordan Trager of Wisselman and Harounian and Associates. He was amazing. If you have a case like this, call him. I'm sure he would be more than happy to help you out. Thank you again, Jordan, for being on the show. I want to thank our sponsors, the Russo Law Group, MedPro, once again Nut Butter, and Fortunoff's Fine Jewelry for sponsoring all of Hilary Topper On Air. And last but not least, I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. If you want more information on this show or any other show, visit our new website, hilarytopperonair.com, or find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud. You name it, we're out there. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.